for anybody who hasn't heard of you, who doesn't know who you are, how would you describe yourself, Amber?
I would describe myself as someone who is here learning in every moment and who is grateful to be alive and in this physical body. I'm really, really grateful to have a chance to be here, truly at the core, to really get to take in the 3D experience because it is miraculous. And I believe that we are these incredible souls in these physical containers. And just the intersection of that is the miracle. And so I would say I'm one of those beings just like you and everybody listening to this. I am a mom of 2 children, which feels like a really big deal to say that out loud. We have a 9-year-old daughter and a 5.5-month-old son, whom we just adopted. And I have an amazing husband who is my best friend and fellow entrepreneur. And it's been a road that we've both worked really hard to get to be able to live this life in this way. And we continue to be so devoted to the work. And in my work specifically, I get to help people make their dreams come true. I mean, that's really what my work is about. I work with entrepreneurs and maybe some folks who consider themselves unlikely entrepreneurs, but people who had a vision and a dream for a different world. And in relationship and response to the world that they lived in and grew up in. And so their just responsibility, their radical personal responsibility to create change and to create something better and different and to leave the world a different place is such a privilege and an honor. And it gives me so many ideas and just such inspiration on the daily. And I've been doing this work with entrepreneurs in this way for the last 8 years. And I love it so much. I'm an author. I'm a speaker and podcast host and just, somebody who loves nature and wants to be outside as much as possible.
You're a lot of things, but I actually want to start with how you introduced the very first thing that you said. You said, I'm a mom to 2. And I know that the journey to becoming a mom to 2, and you talked about being a miraculous being. Those are 2 things that really jumped out at me. And I know that the journey to becoming a mom to 2 has been one that's required miracles. So tell us about that before we jump into all of the other things. Tell us about that. Why this journey to being a mom of 2 has been such a miracle.
Yeah. I mean, it's my oldest dream, right? To be a mother. It's before books and all the things that I had dreams about as a little kid. The first dream I always had and knew was motherhood. And I don't honestly hear many people say that, but it's the truth for me. It was to be a mom was one of my biggest dreams. And when I was, 29, 30, I had to deal with, just a reckoning within myself. I had an eating disorder and I just had a lot of self-hatred. And I knew that if I didn't face that deep work head on, I would be passing on a baton I didn't want to pass on to my future children. And I always knew, Sandra, that I was going to have a daughter. I just knew it. I knew her soul. I felt her. And she was my first child. And I can just joyfully say that I worked really hard at dropping that baton before my pregnancy even happened. And during my pregnancy, when my body was going through all these changes and really, facing that and owning that healing work, which was just my coping mechanism for trauma. That was the way that I handled the emotionality of trauma growing up as someone who survived childhood sexual abuse and just, overachieving paradigms and all of the stress and things that I sort of put upon myself, and the world did too. Yeah. So it's complex, but it was motherhood really, expedited my healing work. It really saved me from the pain that I was walking with for so long. It was the commitment that helped me to really change, and become more of who I was meant to be. And so we had our daughter when I was 31 and I turned 32 a few days after. And we did go through fertility to conceive her, but we conceived her on the first try with IUI. So it wasn't like I didn't really have a story of infertility at that point. I just thought, wow, okay, this worked. And we decided we were going to get pregnant and we did. And then after that, I was in my business. I launched my business when my daughter was 9 months old. I started my coaching company. I was doing the nap time hustle, loving motherhood, loving getting to be a coach and do this work. And my business continued to grow and my daughter continued to grow. They're like basically the same age. And, we tried, and we just thought like, oh, well, we'll get pregnant it's not going to be difficult. And over those years, it was just not happening. And so in 2019, we went and met with our doctor again. And he basically said to us, like point blank, based upon your numbers, you're not a candidate for IVF. And it was like the rug getting pulled out because I had thought like, okay, we're like going in to get help now. And he's telling us like, actually, like almost like the ship has sailed. And I wasn't prepared for that information. And I think I kind of went into like a bit of a paralysis around it. And it's interesting that 2019 was my biggest year in my business. I had all of the success that year, like all these big things were happening. And I wasn't able to really like contemplate the idea that there was some finality to this. I was just confused, and a bit heartbroken, but I also did what I think a lot of us here who are listening to this do. I decided I was going to work at it. And so I went and saw my naturopath and we started doing work on, just hormonal health and thyroid and all these different things just to like fine tune things. And I went back at the start of 2021 or at the end of 2020, and I met my doctor and he said, your numbers have changed. And if you really want this, we can go for it. And so at the start of 2021, we started IVF and I was all in. Like I was, financially able to do it. I was emotionally able to do it. My body was ready for it. I was a Division I athlete. I played soccer in college. So I really tapped her to help me go for it, and get my body ready in that same way. And we did not have success in our first round. And it was devastating, but I was like, okay, we're going to give this another go. And then we went through with the second round and we had even better results that time. And then we ultimately did conceive. But unfortunately we ended up losing the pregnancy pretty early on, just within like a, week or two after knowing that we were pregnant, and it just didn't go the way I had hoped. And so I think the biggest thing for me, and this was 2021 was a year of just really profound grief, because it wasn't just about losing the pregnancy. It was early on. So blessedly, I was in that time frame. It was still heartbreaking, but it wasn't as heartbreaking if it had been further. What was most heartbreaking was the realization, Sandra, that my body was telling me, I can't do this anymore. I can't go through with this, and I did, and I won't tell that whole story because it's a long one, but I had a near-death experience when my daughter was born, and her labor and my recovery after were really challenging experiences. She was great. My body had some challenges, but it did heal miraculously and beautifully. And so what I was grappling with was this understanding that my fertility in my life, like as a woman, was complete. Mm-hmm. And I was 39. And it was not how I planned on this going. It was not the story that I thought I would be living at all. Like I was in denial, disbelief, all the things. I couldn't even just swallow it, because I felt like there was another child that we were meant to have. My motherhood did not feel complete. And so these two things were in complete conflict with one another. And I didn't know what to do. I just really didn't know what to do. But just like the version of me that was sort of down on her knees in 2019 and just trying to, figure it out, who decided that she was going to call the naturopath and behind the scenes just start doing this work quietly. I also called an adoption consultancy when I was down on my knees, in prayer and in grief. And we had a conversation and we made the decision to move forward with it very, very, very slowly, with no sort of urgency or scarcity or like desperation, but just like, maybe this is what we're supposed to do all along, and just like in that place of devotion. And that was in around end of May into June of 2021. And we didn't end up going through our whole process of home study approvals and doing all of our trainings and all those things until like October, November. We were finally approved at the start of December. And so, we had been just really spending time being educated during that time period, like really opening our hearts and doing the heart work that is required in adoption, and understanding, empathizing, learning, feeling our hearts break, reading about people's stories and women's stories, and, it was just, it took our relationship to another level because we had to talk about things that we would never think we would have to talk about, scenarios of things that were just so heartbreaking and so difficult and so courageous and powerful and inspiring. It was just like every facet of the emotional rainbow. And so, in March, really in February of 2022, I felt like I got this clarity and I just made this decision to believe in our baby no matter what, because we're like really on this path of adoption and we were feeling like this is for us. And so we had this like deep conversation one night and I remember just saying like, I think the thing that has to happen is we just have to make the decision to believe in our baby, however they're meant to come in. And so at that point, we just started saying yes to everything. Like any case that came through, we just said yes. And I just said like, we have to just like let God handle the rest. And we can't be so particular about the how. Like we just know in our hearts that someone is missing from our family. And we don't mean just even one person. Like we meant like the birth mom. We meant like whoever else was going to be coming into our world as a result of this experience. And March 13th, we got an email about a baby boy who had been born in Florida. And and then we were chosen the next day and he was here. And it was not like, it wasn't one of those things where it's like, they're due in, a couple months, but like he was here. And so he was here. So we got on a plane at 5 a.m. and we flew there with an empty car seat. And, over a week later, once we were cleared to travel home, we flew home with our son, Alexander, and he was only 2 days old. And when we met him, and now he is 5.5 months old, and he's such a light, and we are just profoundly grateful.
Describe that moment. I can't imagine it, but describe that moment when you saw Alexander for the first time, when he was put in your arms for the very first time.
It's interesting. What was equally important to me in meeting him was seeing his birth mom and making sure that, that it was as much about her as it was about him. And I'm like looking at Alex, but in my mind, I was like, I have a whole life with you. Like I have the rest of our lives together, and the rest of my life at least. And I don't know how much time I'm going to have with your birth mom. And so I'm just going to we're really sharing this moment because I want her to trust me. I want her to know me. I want her to feel me. I want her to understand how much love I have for her. And that I'm here for her, right? Like this is an us thing. And like God brought us together for a reason that maybe we'll never know. Maybe we will know like right away. I don't know. But I love her, I love her deeply. And we have an open relationship in terms of the adoption, and we are connected with her, and I pray for her every day and send her pictures. And that moment was so beautiful, but it was just, it was for all of us, and for as much for her as it was for Alex.
I imagine the courage it took for her to make that decision, right? And and now you have this beautiful little guy who just I love watching on social media when you share, and especially the interaction between brother and sister. It is the cutest thing.
It's
one
so
of the things that I've loved about you, I've always loved about you, is how open you've been. Like even in this whole journey of the struggle of the IVF and then the losing the baby and all of it, you've been so open. What made you decide for something that is so personal, for something that is so deeply vulnerable, for you to share it on social media?
Yeah, I had to really think about it with all the situations. I think the IVF one for sure. I wasn't sharing it, I don't think, right at first. I can't really exactly remember. It feels like it was a lifetime ago. But I remember this moment of thinking to myself, like, do you want to share this? And there was a part of me, I'll be totally honest, that was like, ooh, there was a fear-based part that came up and was like, will your clients think you're not going to be able to help them if you're going through this experience? And I just went to this place of I had to really sit with that and feel into it. And the answer was like, well, integrity and truth are my top core values, right next to love. And what are you then like almost taking from them and not sharing the truth of your experience? And then I thought about my experience of seeing other women share their journeys and how much it helped me and informed me, maybe in even like silent ways that I never messaged them, but I was like, I saw what they shared, and it helped prepare me for certain things, and it helped me see with a different perspective. And so I just thought, I don't have anything to hide. Obviously, I'm not going to share things that are too tender or that are, I'm not able to. It wasn't like a, sort of like sensationalist, voyeuristic kind of thing. It was just like, this is stuff that I've brought through the filter of my heart that I'm sharing with you. And I feel like it's been life-giving to people in ways that I'll probably never know about. And I'm really grateful for that. And it also just felt very cathartic to just be honest about what I was going through. And then, it helps me to show up more authentically across the board, even in my coaching, to say like, 2021 was one of the hardest years of my life. And my work was actually this little safe harbor for me to come and just pour into you and coach with you and work with you, where I could like turn the grief switch off and just come in and love you. And then, be back in my life. And my work was really nourishing in that way. It was medicine for me in that way too. So I think showing the and both of that, like showing the full spectrum again, worked out to be a beautiful thing, not just for me, but for other people as well.
I've loved watching your journey, your evolution, and your other, as you said, your other life where you're helping people birth their dreams. It's really been so inspiring watching the programs that you launch and just your energy and your heart that you bring. What is it that attracted you to doing that work in the first place?
I grew up being an athlete, so I was always being coached. I always had great coaches and mentors, and I valued so deeply being seen by them and being witnessed by them and being believed in by them. It's like the gift of one person believing in you has the capacity to completely transform the world. And so I think about the believers along my path that were there to say, like, you've got this, like, you've got something special, like, you can do it. And what medicine that was for me as a kid and growing up. And I can remember very specific sort of little moments when different coaches said different things that really, really provided incredible value to my life. And so I just naturally became, I coached at soccer camps in the summer. Under the wing of my mentor, my coach. I ended up getting to be a TA in college. I ended up teaching at my university when I was working there for the 10 years that I worked in collegiate athletics, marketing and branding and corporate sales. So I just think I was privy to having all these amazing mentors in my life. I was the captain of my college soccer team. So like leadership was just naturally something that was always in me. And I had these really cool ways to practice it and to not only receive, but also to then offer it. I launched an internship program in my career, and it became nationally recognized. And I would help students go through their whole college career, building out whatever their career is going to be, and then helping them get jobs, after they graduated. And usually like in sports or in marketing firms or places around the country. In fact, I just had one of my former students was a member of my mastermind for a year. And it was just such a cool moment, and I actually, during our mentorship time, she left her corporate job to launch her own events planning agency. And she's doing so amazing. And it's such a full circle, cool moment. So I think that value of coaching and mentorship has been so beautiful for me on my journey. It's been such a game changer. And it was just a natural thing for me to want to get into that profession myself and to be a believer for people, to be a stand for them, to hold with them. And to, I'm also, I think, because of the childhood trauma that I had to heal through, I was in therapy really young. I understood emotional dynamics in a very sophisticated way at a very young age. I understood why people did what they did. I understood human motivation and psychology. It's something I've always been fascinated by. And so I think like just that natural curiosity, and then my studies supported it as well. And it's just naturally what I study now, what I'm always fascinated in learning about is like, why are we the way we are? Why do we suffer because of, the way we think? Like, why do we think that way? And how do we change it? And how do successful people who are like really, living fulfilling, meaningful lives, like how do they actually do that? And I just kind of like get sort of mad scientist about it and really get into the studying of that. And so I love sharing what I've learned with people who want that, who really want to create a different reality for themselves and for their people, the people that they love.
What's the number one, or what are some of the biggest ways that you see the women, and I know you work with people, but I know a lot of the people you work with are women. What are the biggest ways that you see that we get in the way of our own dreams, of achieving our own dreams? What are the things that you see are kind of common to many people?
Yeah, I mean, I think one is, we're relational beings. And so comparison is just a natural strategy that actually it's one that keeps us safe. It's an important method, essentially, to be able to look at somebody else and go, oh, wow, look what they're doing. Okay. That's a good way to learn, and so I don't think I think we talk about comparisonitis always in this very like one dimensional sort of negative way, I think in this type of industry and I think that it's great information. And what would be more helpful would to go to this place of neutrality, of like observation mode and being like our own little scientists and saying, oh, isn't it so interesting that she's chosen this path and look at the results that she's gotten? That's really neat. I might be able to do my version of that, and like, instead of comparing ourselves in a negative way, let's try to flip that switch and say like, oh, this is proof, right? That it's possible. And what's possible for me. So I think that's one. I think we have a habit, which is perfect for what we're talking about here, of feeling unworthy. And there's a habit of putting ourselves last. There's a habit of scarcity thought. There's a habit, like we have these habits of thought that are just more well practiced than they're the opposite. And so if I, and I can go all day on the topic of worthiness, but I'm sure we'll probably get into that a little bit more here. The definition of worthy in the dictionary is deserving of merit or recognition. And so my question to that is always like, according to whom? And so we have to center ourselves as the one who gets to be able to define that. And it dovetails with what I was just talking about with comparisonitis. So it's like, look at your habits, look at the habits of your thoughts. And let's understand that all of our behaviors, right? Like we try to affect change on a behavioral level, but the work that I do with my clients it's so much deeper than that, because I can train you, right? To like click on these things first in the morning. But if you don't understand why you're doing that and what belief that actually intersects with and what we're actually trying to affect change around so that we can create a different emotional reality, a different cellular reality within your physical body and how those things expand, the behaviors just don't really matter, right? The behaviors are just symptoms. And so, so I think like these are some of we're really on like a surface level with trying to affect change in our lives. And as a business coach, I always say like your business cannot outperform your self-concept. So you and you, babe, like how do you think about you when you wake up in the morning when your feet hit the floor? That's the conversation I want to be having. And I also understand if the answer to that question is a negative one, that it's going to feel very difficult to do this work. But all I need is like this much, like just this much self-compassion, just even a glimmer of desire to want to have a different reality when you wake up in the morning. That is the doorway. That's all you need. It's just a sparkle of a different desire than what you've been doing. And it can change everything. It can change the entire trajectory of your life.
I love what you just said, because I think oftentimes, and I'm going to guess this is something that happens to you all the time, is that people come to you for business coaching and they're like, give me the strategy, give me the 20 steps, give me the blah, 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 blah. And it's great. You can have every mastermind and every strategy and everything. But ultimately, it comes down to who are you being? Who are you at your core? And so how do you start to help people with the work that you do to recognize that yes, absolutely, we do need the strategy in business, but that it has to start with a strong foundation of you, as you said, in your self-concept.
Yeah. I mean, I did it too. I joined masterminds thinking that, that strategy was that someone would tell me the secret to some strategy that I hadn't learned yet that was going to like make it all feel better. And I think the reality is, if we can really cut to the chase here, most of us as women, what we really want to feel is safety and security. Like that's what we're actually saying when we're like, I want to have $50,000 a month. It's like, do you, Patricia, or do you just want to feel safe and secure? Because who gives a rat's ass about the number at the end of the day? Doesn't really mean that much at the end of the day if you're in the paradigm of fulfillment and success. And the reality is that we all have a different version of success, right? When I was in my corporate career, what I was making in a year back then, I've made in a month, I've made in a week in this business, but it's all relative. I don't say that to be boastful. I say it to say that was amazing when I was there. And then the needs changed, like the reality changed, the demands changed, the world changed, the access changed. It would be ridiculous to make that in a week in my old corporate job. That wouldn't make any sense. That's not how it's set up, right? So it's like, where are you living? Wherever you are. And what, I'm going to use the word need, but I'm always intentional about how I use the word need, because when we're in need, we need to meet those needs. It's important, right? When we are wanting for something, there's a different energetic signature versus when we're desiring something. Okay.
Oh, say that again, because that was deep.
So when we are wanting for something, there's a different energetic signature than there is when we are desiring something. There's a different, do you feel the difference between those words?
One is coming from a place of lack, right? From I don't have it. Yes. Whereas one is, oh, it would be nice to have that, which is, as you say, very different energetically.
And I feel like with the word, with desire, the reality is, I'm going to say it, if the dream is in you, it's for you. So you are not having arbitrary dreams and desires. Our dreams are our actual directions. They are guiding us toward what it is that is required for us to answer our soul's calling, to step into the fullness of who we really are. Our dreams are a really big freaking deal. So going back to your earlier question, we often diminish our dreams because we're comparing them to somebody else's. Let's just say a family member who learned along the way that dreaming was ridiculous, which was a frivolous thing to do. But they weren't born with my soul. They weren't born with the calling that God put into me. They have a different one, right? I was a 5-year-old playing in my bedroom with Barbie dolls, and I felt like God was talking to me. And I remember never being able to tell this story out loud anywhere because I thought people would think I was so weird if I told this story. The world that I live in now, people are like, oh yeah, I remember when that happened for me, right? Like I love that I'm in the world now where that's just a normal thing to talk about that actually happening to you as a little girl. And I remember the words were, this didn't happen to you for nothing. You are here to help other people. As a 5-year-old, and I got it. I was like, okay. And I had clarity and vision of speaking, of writing, of telling my story so that other people could understand that they were not alone on their path of going through trauma, of going through abuse, of going through hard things, of going through suffering, of going through emotional neglect, all of this. They're not alone. And yet those things do not define us. Those are experiences that we have along the path, but they do not define who we are in our souls. So I bring us back to desire and to dreams. I believe that this planet, this world, humanity could change in miraculous order if we all started taking our dreams a whole lot more seriously. If we started talking to children at a young age about what their dreams are, and I don't just mean the ones you have while you're asleep. If we empowered them to listen to the wisdom that is coming through them simply because they are these divine, miraculous beings that are here on this planet for a reason. It is so rare to exist. And so this, my friends, is the invitation. Now, yes, we need to have our needs met. That's where the safety and security thing comes in. When it comes to business, we got to make sure that you've got things on the menu, ways to help people, that we're activating your gifts so that you can help people and actually receive money in exchange for that as your profession. I am a professional coach. This is my career. In the same way that I had a career with a name on the door and a master's degree to match and all of those things, that was my career then, but this is my career now. I'm a professional speaker. I'm an author. I'm a coach. I'm a trainer. I'm a teacher. There's something about saying those words and owning that and putting the word professional in front of it. Sandra, I saw you feel that. That has to happen. That has to happen.
Yeah.
In order for us to walk over that threshold and to say, oh, and this is my dream, and this is what I desire, and this is what I need to feel supported in order to be in this work, right? I used to think it was frivolous that I needed a lot more spaciousness in my calendar because I used to just, go, go, go. I would work 60-hour weeks in my old profession. The work that I do now is a deeply creative pursuit and process. And creativity is not something you can just shotgun. You need to give it space to breathe. You need to give it time to receive. You need to sit with words and work with them. You need to give yourself the space to allow. And yet in the same breath, I could literally be handed a microphone and be told to step on stage and to do a keynote talk, and I could do it in a second because I can channel that. But it takes time and effort to get to the place where you can build that confidence and trust in yourself and your abilities and your body to be able to actually do that. That takes work.
That is, nowadays it's a buzzword, right? Embodiment. That is what it is, right?
That's what it is.
The embodying of that.